The explosion shook the entire command deck. Captain Haiwan grabbed her seat as alarms filled the air. Through the viewing screen, she watched another one of her defense stations break apart in a ball of fire. The Krethik warships kept coming, wave after wave, their dark holes blocking out the stars. "Shield status?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Down to 30%, her tactical officer replied. His crystalline face showed cracks of stress. The Velans were not built for war. Their bodies were delicate, formed from living crystal that grew on their low-gravity moon. They had joined the Galactic Coalition 300 years ago and thought they were safe. They thought their allies would protect them. Another blast hit the station. The lights flickered. "Where are the Quillari fleets?" High One demanded. "Where are the Heptids? We sent the distress call 2 hours ago." Her communications officer, Dong Sik, shook his head. "No response, Captain. The Krethik are jamming most frequencies, but the emergency channel is still clear. They should have received it." Haiwan felt cold fear spread through her. The Krethik Dominion had appeared at their system 3 days ago with no warning. They demanded surrender. When the Velans refused, the bombardment began. The invaders were ruthless. They didn't just want the planet. They wanted to send a message to the entire galaxy. "I'll send the distress call again," Haiwan ordered. "Maximum power. Include our tactical data. If we fall, at least the Coalition will know what happened here." Dong Sik worked quickly at his station. "Sending now, Captain." Using all available power to boost the signal. The message was simple and desperate. "Under attack. Requesting immediate military assistance. Coordinates attached. Please, hurry." What Captain Haiwan didn't know was that her signal had bounced off a strange cosmic anomaly at the edge of their system. The anomaly bent the signal, sending it in a direction it was never meant to go. The message traveled far beyond Coalition space, past the borders of known territory, into a region marked on all galactic maps with a warning, Quarantine Zone 7, 200 years ago. The Galactic Coalition had discovered a species in that zone. They came from a planet that shouldn't have been able to support advanced life. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was toxic with high oxygen levels. The weather was violent. Deadly predators filled the oceans and land. Even the microscopic life was aggressive. The Coalition scientists called it a Class 12 death world. The most dangerous rating possible. The species that evolved there called themselves humans. The first contact meeting had been polite, but tense. The Coalition representatives were terrified of these creatures. They had dense bones and heavy muscles just to survive their planet's gravity. They had forward-facing eyes like predators. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would kill most Coalition species. They were adaptable in ways that seemed impossible. The Coalition's Zen-up psychologists studied them carefully. Their report was disturbing. Humans showed aggressive tendencies and a concerning capacity for violence. But they also showed something equally concerning: powerful protective instincts and a sense of duty that bordered on self-destructive. The recommendation was clear. For mutual safety, the humans should remain in their region of space. A quarantine zone was established. It wasn't imprisonment, the Coalition insisted. It was just prudent caution. The humans had agreed, though their representatives seemed disappointed. That was 200 years ago. The galaxy had mostly forgotten about the Deathworlders in Quarantine Zone 7. Far away in Earth's orbital command station, Admiral Jinwoo was reviewing fleet readiness reports when the alert came through. His second officer, Commander Hyo-jin, brought the message to him immediately. "Sir, we've received a distress call. It's using Galactic Coalition emergency protocols." "What?" Jinwoo sat up straight. "From who?" "Unknown species. The database identifies them as Velans. A Coalition member. They're under attack." Hyo-jin brought up the coordinates. "It's beyond the quarantine boundary, sir. About 80 light-years past our agreed borders." Jinwoo read the message carefully. The desperation was clear even through the clinical language. He looked at the tactical data. A species was being destroyed while they waited for help that wasn't coming. "How long to get there?" he asked. with the new drive systems, for hours for the expeditionary fleet. Jinwoo made his decision in seconds. Begin mobilization. I want 6 battle carriers, 40 destroyers, and full support vessels. We launch in 4 hours. Hyojin hesitated. Sir, we're not supposed to leave the quarantine zone without coalition approval, and they shouldn't have put their distress frequencies where we could hear them, Jinwoo replied. He started entering commands into his console. Notify Earth Command. Tell them we're responding to an emergency. We can handle the diplomatic complaints after we save lives. Within minutes, the human military machine began to move. It was something they had prepared for over 2 centuries. Since the quarantine began, humanity hadn't been idle. They explored their region of space. They built colonies. They developed technology. And they trained. Always trained. Because deep in the human spirit was a truth that even a galactic coalition couldn't contain. When someone cried for help, humans would answer. Across Earth's orbital stations and moon bases, crews rushed to their ships. Marines loaded equipment. Pilots ran pre-flight checks. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Everyone knew what was happening. After 200 years of isolation, humanity was finally going to show the galaxy what they were really made of. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet began to launch. Massive battle carriers that dwarfed anything the Coalition had seen before. Destroyers bristling with weapons developed from centuries of human warfare. Support ships carrying everything needed to help a species they'd never met. Admiral Jinwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, and watched the fleet form up. His tactical officer reported, "All ships ready. Set course for Vela Prime," Jinwoo ordered. "Maximum speed." And someone send a response to that distress call. "Tell them help is coming." Far away, Captain Haiwan watched another defense platform die. She didn't know that her desperate call had been heard. She didn't know that 56 warships were already traveling through space at impossible speeds. She didn't know that the quarantined Deathworlders had decided that 200 years of caution could wait. All she knew was that her people were dying. And help hadn't come. The Krethik war leader broadcast his victory message across all channels, demanding final surrender. Captain Haiwan prepared to give the order to evacuate the civilians. While they still could, neither of them knew that everything was about to change. The bombardment continued without mercy. Captain Haiwan had lost count of how many impacts the station had taken. Half her crew was dead or injured. The medical bay was overflowing. Down on the planet's surface, entire cities were burning. Commander Taehyun contacted her from his cruiser. His ship had taken heavy damage in the first attack. "Captain, we can't hold much longer. The civilian transports are almost ready. We should begin evacuation." Haiwan felt her hearts break. Evacuate meant abandoning their home. It meant admitting defeat. But Taehyun was right. They had fought as hard as they could. Now they had to save who they could. "Begin evacuation procedures," she said quietly. "Prioritize the young and injured." Her sensor officer, Nayoung, suddenly spoke up. "Captain, I'm detecting something. Multiple warp signatures appearing at the edge of the system." Haiwan felt a surge of hope. The coalition fleets. Finally, Nayeon looked confused as she studied her screens. "I don't think so, Captain. The energy signatures are wrong. They don't match any ship types in our database. And the size readings." She paused. "Captain, these ships are enormous." On the main screen, dozens of new contacts appeared. Haiwan counted them quickly. 56 vessels of various sizes. The largest ones showed power readings that made no sense. The Krethik had detected them too. War leader Greshtok aboard his command ship studied the new arrivals with suspicion. His tactical officer reported the numbers. Could be late Velen reinforcements, Greshtok decided. Or perhaps some coalition patrol that stumbled into our operation. "Open a channel. Give them the standard warning." The message went out on all frequencies. "Leave immediately or be destroyed. This system belongs to the Krethik Dominion now. You have one chance to retreat." The response came quickly. In perfect galactic common, but with an accent that no one recognized. "This is Admiral Jinwoo of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are attacking a species that called for help. You have 30 seconds to cease fire and begin withdrawal, or we will classify you as hostile and respond accordingly. 30 seconds. Greshtok actually laughed. His tactical officer looked worried, but the war leader dismissed it. The Krethic Dominion had conquered 40 star systems. They had destroyed fleets 3 times the size of this unknown group. Whoever these newcomers were, they would learn respect for Krethic power. All ships, attack formation, Greshtok ordered. Destroy them. The Krethic fleet, nearly 100 warships strong, turned toward the unknown vessels and opened fire. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians across the galaxy for decades. The human fleet responded immediately. Their movements were precise and aggressive. They didn't try to evade or establish defensive positions. Instead, accelerated directly toward the Krethic fleet. Captain Haiwan watched in shock as the human ships opened fire. The weapons were unlike anything she had seen. Metal projectiles moving at impossible speeds, crossing the distance between fleets in seconds. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves, dodging point defense systems that should have stopped them. Energy beams that cut through Krethic shields like they weren't there, but it wasn't just the weapons that were terrifying. It was how the humans fought. Coalition naval doctrine emphasized keeping distance. Using long-range weapons, preserving ships through careful maneuvering, the humans did the opposite. They closed to what any coalition officer would call suicide range. They maneuvered with violent precision, their ships pulling turns that should have crushed their crews from the forces involved. A Krethic battlecruiser exploded, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. How are they doing this? Nayung whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. Commander Tahan had accessed the classified archives, searching frantically for any information about these humans. What he found made his blood run cold. Contact Report 27, Deathworld species, extreme caution required. He read the details quickly. Earth, their homeworld, had gravity 3 times standard. The atmosphere contained dangerous levels of oxygen. The planet was covered in deadly weather systems, aggressive predators, and toxic plant life. The humans had evolved to survive conditions that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Their bodies reflected that evolution. Dense bones, powerful muscles, redundant organs, healing factors that seemed impossible, and combat instincts honed by millions of years of fighting to survive on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. The Coalition had quarantined them 200 years ago out of fear. Now, those quarantined Deathworlders were saving Velen lives. Battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the Krethic fleet was destroyed. Not defeated or driven off, destroyed. 70% of their ships were debris. The survivors were crippled and retreating as fast as their damaged engines could manage. The human fleet had taken damage, but not a single ship was lost. War leader Greshtok's command ship was one of the few that survived. He sat in stunned silence, watching the human vessels on his screens. They had moved through his fleet like predators through prey, efficient, brutal, unstoppable. His communications officer received a message. "Sir, the humans are hailing us." Admiral Jinwoo's voice was calm. "You are leaving this system immediately. If any Krethic vessel returns here, we will destroy it. Do you understand?" Greshtok understood. For the first time in his military career, he gave the order to retreat without conditions. Captain Haiwan sat in her command chair, trying to process what she had just witnessed. The battle had been so fast, so brutal, so completely one-sided. These humans had destroyed in 11 minutes what the entire Velen fleet couldn't stop in 3 days. "Captain, we're receiving a communication from the human flagship," Dong-Sik reported. The face that appeared on the screen made Haiwan instinctively recoil. She couldn't help it. The human had forward-facing eyes positioned like a predator, strong features, an expression that somehow seemed both dangerous and kind. Admiral Jinwoo spoke in Galactic Common. "Captain Haiwan, I presume? We received your distress call. We're here to help." Haiwan found her voice, though it shook slightly. "Thank you." You saved our lives. But who are you? Your ships aren't in any coalition database. We're human. From Earth? Your coalition asked us to stay in our region of space 200 years ago. We've been monitoring emergency frequencies, though. When we heard your call, we came as fast as we could. From the quarantine zone, Haiwan said quietly, understanding dawning on her. Ginwu nodded. Yes, I know what the reports say about us. I know what your people probably think. But right now, your world needs help. We have medical teams, engineers, and supplies. Will you accept our assistance? Haiwan looked around her damaged command deck. She thought of the burning cities below, the wounded and dying, the children who needed protection. She thought about the classified reports that called these humans dangerous. Then she thought about how they had crossed 80 light years to answer a call for help from strangers. Yes, she said. We accept. Thank you, Admiral. That will begin immediately, Jinwu replied. And Captain, you can stand down your ships. We'll maintain security until you're ready. No one is going to hurt your people while we're here. As the human fleet moved into protective positions around Vela Prime, Haiwan realized something important. The galaxy had quarantined these beings because they were dangerous. But they had forgotten that dangerous and evil were not the same thing. Sometimes, dangerous meant capable of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Across the coalition, news of the battle was spreading. The quarantined Deathworlders had left their zone. They had military power far beyond estimates, and they were heading to a coalition world with a full battle fleet. High Command was calling an emergency session. But on Vela Prime, the humans were already helping wounded civilians. The human medical shuttle docked with Captain Haiwan's damaged station 6 hours after the battle. She waited nervously with her senior officers as the airlock opened. She had seen Admiral Jinwu's face on a screen, but seeing humans in person was different. 3 humans stepped through the airlock. They moved carefully in the low Velan gravity, their steps controlled and precise. The leader was a woman wearing what looked like a medical uniform. She was shorter than Haiwan, but somehow seemed to take up more space. Captain Haiwan, I'm Dr. Mi-kyun. We're here to help with your wounded. The doctor's voice was gentle, but Haiwan couldn't stop staring at her arms. Even through the uniform, she could see the muscles. This was a doctor, not a soldier, and she looked like she could bend metal with her bare hands. Thank you, Dr. Hai, one managed. Our medical bay is overwhelmed. Any help would be appreciated. Mi-kyung and her team moved through the station with practiced efficiency. They carried medical equipment that seemed heavy even to them. Haiwan watched as they examined Velan patients with careful precision. The contrast was startling. These beings came from a world of violence and death. Yet they touched the wounded with incredible gentleness. Na-young, the sensor officer, approached Haiwan quietly. Captain, I've been analyzing the battle data. You need to see this. In a private room, Na-young showed her the recordings. The human ships had closed 2 ranges where coalition captains would never fight. Their point defense systems had reaction times that seemed impossible. And their crew members had survived accelerations that should have turned them into paste against their seats. Look at this, Na-young said, pointing to one section. This destroyer pulled a 40 gravity turn. 40 gravities. Any coalition crew would have died. The humans barely slowed down. Haiwan felt cold. They're built for their planet's gravity, 3 times ours. To them, 40 gravities is survivable. Captain Na-young continued. I accessed more of the old reports, the ones from first contact. The coalition scientists were terrified. Earth has predators that hunt in packs, weather systems that destroy cities, diseases that kill in days. The humans evolved fighting all of that, fighting each other. They've been at war for their entire history, but they came to help us, Haiwan said quietly. I know. That's what scares me. They're capable of terrible violence, but they choose to protect instead. What do you call a predator that decides to guard the prey? Haiwan didn't have an answer. Down on the planet's surface, human engineers were already working. Commander Taehyun watched them with fascination and fear. They wore mechanical suits called exoskeletons because the low Velen gravity made it hard for them to work normally. Without enough weight, their strength was actually a problem. They couldn't judge force properly. One engineer, a young man named Jahayan, explained it to Tahayan. On Earth, everything has weight. Tools, equipment, even our own bodies. Here, everything feels like it might float away. The exoskeletons add resistance, so we can work without accidentally throwing things into orbit. Tahayan watched as Jahayan repaired a power conduit that Velen engineers had marked as too dangerous to approach. The human just walked up to it, checked his suit's insulation, and started working. "Aren't you afraid?" Tahayan asked. Jahayan shrugged. "It's just electrical current. Back home, we have lightning storms that make this look like static electricity. You learn to respect power, but fear doesn't help you fix things." Across the galaxy, Coalition High Command was having a very different conversation. The emergency session included representatives from all major member species. The Heptic Counselor BL was speaking loudly about the human threat. They left their quarantine zone without permission. They brought a military fleet into Coalition space. This is exactly what we feared 200 years ago. Counselor Wu Sung of the Quelati disagreed. They saved a Coalition member species from annihilation. "Would you prefer they had followed protocol and let the Velens die?" "That's not the point," BLM insisted. "The point is, we have no control over them. They're too strong, too aggressive, too unpredictable. What happens next time? What if they decide they don't like our rules?" The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to demand the humans return to their quarantine zone immediately. Others wanted to thank them, but firmly establish boundaries. A few suggested that maybe the quarantine had been a mistake. Admiral Jinwoo ended the debate with a simple message broadcast to all Coalition channels. His tone was polite but absolutely firm. "This is Admiral Jinwoo. We're not leaving until Vela Prime is secure and the Krethic threat is neutralized. You can discuss our quarantine status after innocent people are safe. We respect the Coalition, but we respect life more." On Vela Prime, a young Velen scientist named Ji-Wan was studying the humans with scientific curiosity. She had permission to interview human soldiers who were helping with security. She chose to talk to Marine Sergeant Hyanwu, who was checking defensive positions. "Can I ask you some questions?" Gi-Wan began nervously. Hyanwu smiled. It was meant to be friendly, but Gi-Wan couldn't help noticing his teeth. Sharp canines. Predator teeth. "Sure, what do you want to know?" "Why did you come?" "You didn't know us. We're nothing to you." Hyanwu sat down, careful not to move too quickly and scare her. Someone needed help. That's enough. On Earth, we have this old idea. It goes back thousands of years in different cultures. When you hear someone calling for help, you answer, it doesn't matter if they're family or strangers. You answer, "But you could have died," Ji-Wan said. "The Krethic fleet was bigger than yours." "Yeah," Hyanwu agreed. "We could have died. But if we ran away because something was dangerous, we'd still be hiding in caves on Earth. Humans don't really do safe. We do necessary." Ji-Wan thought about that. "The Coalition reports say humans are aggressive and violent." "We can be," Hyanwu said honestly. "We're really good at violence. Had to be to survive our world. But being good at something doesn't mean you have to use it for bad things. I'm trained to fight. I'm trained to kill if necessary. But I'd much rather use that training to protect people. Like us," Gi-Wan said softly. "Like you." That conversation was recorded and sent throughout the Coalition networks. It was one thing to see battle footage of human military power. It was another thing to hear a human soldier explain why they fought, Captain. Haiwan had her own realization when she toured the human medical facilities they had set up. She watched Dr. Mi-Kyun perform surgery on a Velen child who had been crushed in the bombardment. The doctor's hands were steady, despite being strong enough to crush the delicate Velen body. She worked for 8 hours straight without rest. When it was done, and the child was stable, Haiwan asked Mi-Kyun how she could be so gentle. "Practice," Mi-Kyun said simply. "On Earth, our medical training includes working with fragile materials. We learn to control our strength. A surgeon's hands need to be precise, whether you're operating on a human or a Velen. You saved that child's life, Haiwan said. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're all here for. Mi Kyung looked tired but satisfied. Your people called for help, we answered. Everything else is just details. That night, Haiwan stood on an observation deck and watched the human fleet in orbit. Massive warships that could destroy entire fleets. Ships filled with soldiers trained for violence. Beings from a world that had tried to kill them since birth, and every single one of them had come to protect strangers. Commander Taehaeon joined her. I've been reading more about them. Earth history. They fought so many wars. Killed each other over resources, religion, territory, ideas. Their history is soaked in blood. But they're here helping us, Haiwan said. Yes, I think that's the point. They know what violence is. They've lived it. And because they know it so well, they know when to use it and when to prevent it. They fight war so others don't have to. Haiwan looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krethic Dominion was regrouping. And somewhere closer, the Coalition was arguing about what to do with their dangerous saviors. What do you think will happen? She asked so Haiyan considered. I think the galaxy is going to have to accept that humans exist, that they're not going back into quarantine, and that might be the best thing that ever happened to us. The warning came 3 days after the first battle. Commander Taehaeon was working with human engineers when the long-range sensors detected the massive fleet entering the system. He rushed to the rebuilt command center where Captain Haiwan was coordinating relief efforts. Captain, we have a problem. A big one. The display showed the truth. 300 Krethic warships dropping out of warp at the edge of the system. It was the Dominion's Grand Armada, sent to punish both the Velens and these upstart humans who had dared to interfere. Admiral Jin Woo received the report on his flagship. His officers gathered around the tactical display. The numbers were clear. 56 human ships against 300 Krethic vessels. The kind of odds that military academies use as examples of impossible situations. Captain Young-soo, of the destroyer Defiant, whistled softly. Well, this is going to be interesting. Commander Hyojin, Jin Woo's second officer, ran the calculations. Best case scenario, we have a 12% chance of success. That's if everything goes perfectly, and they make serious mistakes. What's the worst case? Someone asked. We all die in the first hour. Shnu studied the display silently. He could order a retreat. No one would blame him. Earth was sending reinforcements, but they wouldn't arrive for another 6 hours. The smart military decision was to withdraw, save the fleet. In return, when they had better odds. He thought about the Velen civilians still being evacuated from damaged cities, the wounded in medical facilities, the children who had finally stopped crying because they felt safe with human soldiers guarding them. We're not leaving, Ginwoo said quietly. Every officer on the bridge turned to look at him. Sir Hyojin began carefully. The odds I know, the odds, Commander. We're still not leaving. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need those reinforcements as fast as possible. Then send a message to the fleet. Battle stations. We're holding the line. Hyojin straightened. Yes, sir. Captain Haiwan watched the human fleet reposition from her command station. She didn't understand. Why would they stay? They could leave. They had done more than anyone could ask. They could withdraw and return with more ships. She opened a communication channel to Ginwoo. Admiral, you don't have to do this. You've already saved us once. We don't expect you to die for us. Jinwoo's face on the screen was calm. Captain, we didn't come here to do half the job. Those ships out there want to finish what they started. As long as we're here, that's not happening. But there are 300 of them. I can count, Captain. Doesn't change anything. We're staying. Haiwan felt something break inside her. Why? Why would you die for us? You owe us nothing. The Coalition locked you away for 200 years. You should hate us. Shnu was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Captain, you asked for help. That's all that matters. You don't owe us anything for answering. That's just what decent people do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a fleet to command. The channel closed. High One sat in stunned silence. Across the human fleet, crews prepared for battle. On the carrier Resolute, pilots ran pre-flight checks on fighters that would probably not return. In the medical bays, doctors prepared for casualties they might not be able to save. Marines checked weapons they might not live to use again. And everywhere, humans faced impossible odds with grim determination and dark humor. On the destroyer Defiant, Captain Young-Soo addressed his crew. So, 300 against 56. They've got numbers. We've got something better. We've got a reason to fight. Those people down there are counting on us. Let's not disappoint them. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sang-mi, checked her weapon systems. Sir, if we die, do you think they'll write songs about us? Only if we make it spectacular, Young-Soo replied with a grin. Let's aim for spectacular. The Krethik Grand Armada advanced slowly. Their supreme commander, Thrakenol, broadcast a message to all ships in the system. It was full of threats and demands for unconditional surrender. He promised to destroy the humans and then finish the Velans. Jinwoo's response was simple. No. The battle began at maximum range. The Krethik had learned from their first encounter. They didn't charge in recklessly. They used coordinated fire, focusing on one human ship at a time. Their strategy was sound. They would use their numbers to overwhelm human defenses through sheer volume of fire. What they didn't account for was human stubbornness. The first human ship to take critical damage was the cruiser, Morningstar, her captain. Ji-hoon refused to retreat. Instead, he aimed his dying ship at a cluster of Krethik battleships and pushed his engines to maximum. The resulting explosion took out 5 enemy vessels. Morningstar is gone, Hyojin reported quietly. Mark them down as having died well, Ginwoo said. All ships, close formation. We're not going to win this by playing it safe. The human fleet pushed forward into the teeth of the Krethik attack. It was insane. It went against every rule of fleet combat. You didn't advance when outnumbered. You didn't close range when facing superior numbers. Unless you were human. The Valens watched from their planet in awe and horror. They saw human ships taking damage that would cripple coalition vessels and keep fighting. They saw human pilots flying through weapons fire that should have been impossible to survive. They saw human crews performing repairs during combat that coalition engineers wouldn't attempt in a safe dock. Commander Taehan pulled up the old reports again, reading them with new understanding. The psychological profile of humanity said they had a concerning disregard for personal safety when protecting others, that they would sacrifice themselves for strangers with minimal hesitation. Coalition had written those words as warnings. Now Taehan understood they were prophecy. The battle raged for 2 hours. The Krethik lost ships steadily, but the humans lost them faster. The destroyer Silver Dawn was torn apart protecting a damaged carrier. The cruiser Iron Will rammed a Krethik command ship to prevent it from attacking civilian transports. The destroyer Breaking Wave held position against impossible odds, buying time for other ships to regroup on the surface. In a school that had been converted to a shelter, Sergeant Hyun-woo and his squad watched the battle through a portable display. Children crowded around them, Velan civilians who had come to trust these strange, dangerous beings. One child, a young Velan named Sora, asked quietly, "Are they going to die?" The humans in the ships. Hyun-woo didn't lie to her. Some of them might. That's what soldiers do. We protect people. Sometimes that means putting ourselves in danger. Why? Sara asked, tears forming. We're not worth dying for. Hyun-woo knelt down to her level. Kid, every life is worth protecting. That's not negotiable. Those people up there? He pointed at the display. They're making sure you get to grow up. That's worth everything. The battle reached its critical point. The human fleet was down to 40 ships. They had held for 2 hours, but the numbers were finally overwhelming them. The Krethik were preparing a final push that would break through, and then the reinforcements from Earth arrived 100 human warships dropped out of warp behind the Krethic fleet. Fresh ships with full weapons and shields. The Krethics suddenly found themselves caught between two forces. Admiral Ginwu allowed himself a small smile. All ships, new orders. Attack pattern Delta. Let's finish this. The next hour was brutal. The Krethic, realizing they were trapped, fought desperately. But they were fighting an enemy that had already proven willing to die for strangers. An enemy that saw impossible odds as just another Tuesday. An enemy from a world that had tried to kill them every single day of their evolution. When the battle ended, the Krethic Grand Armada was destroyed. Of 300 ships, only 73 survived to retreat into warp. They carried with them a message that would spread through the galaxy. Do not fight the humans. They don't know when to quit. The human fleet had paid a terrible price. 12 ships destroyed. 4,327 soldiers dead. They had fought against 5-to-1 odds to protect people they had never met before. Captain Haiwan flew up to the Indomitable in a shuttle. She had to see Admiral Ginwu in person. When she arrived, she found him in the memorial hall, standing before a wall where names were being added. Names of the dead. Admiral, she said softly. Ginwu turned. He looked tired. So tired. Captain Haiwan, your people are safe. The Krethic won't be back. At what cost? Haiwan whispered. All those lives? For us. Why? Jinwu looked at the wall of names. Because it was right. Because when you hear someone calling for help, you answer, that's what we do. That's what we've always done. Haiwan felt tears streaming down her face. The galaxy calls you dangerous. Calls you predators? Oh, we are, Ginwu said simply. But predators can choose what they hunt. We hunt the things that hurt innocent people. We're dangerous to those who deserve it. He turned back to the memorial wall. Every name here made a choice. They chose to stand between danger and people who needed protection. I'd make that choice 1,000 times. So would they? 2 weeks after the second battle, Counselor Biomi of the Heptid Collective arrived at Vela Prime. She had argued most strongly for keeping the humans in their quarantine zone. Now she was here to see what they had actually done. Her shuttle descended through the atmosphere. She expected to see a world still scarred by war. Instead, she saw reconstruction happening at an impossible pace. Human engineers worked alongside Velans, rebuilding power grids and communication systems. Medical facilities that had been overwhelmed were now running smoothly with human doctors. Training Velan staff Captain Haiwan met her at the landing pad. Counselor Biomi welcomed to Vela Prime. Biomi looked around. This is remarkable. I expected it would take months to reach this level of recovery. The humans work fast. Haiwan said simply. They don't really understand the word impossible. Come, I'll show you around. They toured the rebuilding efforts. Bamai watched human soldiers helping Velan children clear debris from a playground. She saw human engineers teaching Velans how to repair their own defense platforms, not just fixing them, but empowering the locals to maintain them. She saw human doctors working 8-hour shifts to care for the wounded. Where is Admiral Ginwu? Bam asked. At the memorial garden. He goes there every day. They found Jinwu standing before a monument that listed the names of all who had died in the battles. Both human and Velan names were carved into the stone together. He was placing flowers at the base. Admiral Bomi said quietly. Ginwu turned. His face was neutral, but his eyes showed the weight he carried. Counselor, welcome to Vela Prime. Came to see what you've done here, Biomi said, and to talk about the future. The future where you send us back to the quarantine zone? Jinwu asked without hostility. Bami was quiet for a moment. That was my recommendation. Yes. I believed you were too dangerous to allow into coalition space. I thought your military power and aggressive nature made you a threat, and now I've seen what you actually do with that power. I've seen soldiers playing with children instead of terrorizing them. I've seen doctors healing instead of harming. I've seen engineers building instead of destroying. Bami looked at the memorial. I was wrong. Not about you being dangerous. You absolutely are. But I was wrong about what that danger means. Jinwoo nodded slowly. We're not going to apologize for being what we are. We come from a world that made us strong because only the strong survived. But we also learned that strength without purpose is just violence. We choose to protect. That's our purpose. Coalition is voting tomorrow, Biomi said. On whether to lift the quarantine and grant you full membership? I'll be voting yes. I wanted you to know that. Thank you, Counselor. That evening, BOMI met with Lieutenant Sang-mi, who had lost her entire squad defending a civilian shelter. She found the young Marine in that same shelter, helping children plant a memorial garden. Lieutenant, may I speak with you? Biomi asked. Sang-mi looked up from where she was showing a child how to plant seeds. Of course, Counselor. They walked a short distance away. Biomi studied the young woman. She looked tired, sad but not broken. You lost your squad, Biomi said. 10 soldiers under your command, all dead protecting Velen civilians. Do you regret it? Sang-mi was quiet for a moment. I regret they're dead. I'll regret that every day for the rest of my life. But do I regret what we did? No, those children in there get to grow up because my squad held that position. That's not regret. That's purpose. But they were strangers to you. Everyone's a stranger until you meet them, Sang-mi said. Those kids aren't strangers anymore. They're people I protected. That makes them mine to care about. Bami thought about that. The reports call your species aggressive and violent. It can be, Sang-mi agreed. But a guard dog is aggressive too. Doesn't make it bad. Just means it knows what to guard against. The next day, the Galactic Coalition held its vote. The session was broadcast across all member worlds. Representatives from dozens of species debated for hours. Some still feared human military power. Others argued that humanity had proven their character through action. Counselor Wusong of the Quelari spoke passionately. The humans did not ask for permission before saving the Velens. They did not calculate political advantage. They heard a cry for help and they answered, "Is that not what we claim the coalition stands for? Mutual protection and cooperation? They're dangerous." Someone argued. "Our fire and storms," Wusun replied. "But we use fire to cook our food and warm our homes. We study storms to predict them and build shelters. The humans are powerful, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But they chose to use that danger to protect the weak. That is not a threat. That is an asset." The vote came down. It wasn't unanimous. Several species abstained, still fearful. But the majority voted yes. Humanity was granted full coalition membership. The quarantine zone was dissolved. Captain Haiwan stood beside Admiral Jinwoo when the announcement came through. Around them, human and Velen crews cheered together. "What will your people do now?" Haiwan asked. "Now that you're free to go anywhere?" Jinwoo smiled. "Same thing we've always wanted to do. Explore, trade, make friends, learn about the galaxy. And if someone needs help," he shrugged, "we'll be there, just like that. Just like that." 3 months later, Captain Haiwan received a promotion to Admiral. She was given command of the 1st Joint Coalition Terran Task Force. Her second in command was Captain Young-soo. The human officer who had joked about making their deaths spectacular. Their mission was to patrol the border regions, protecting Coalition space from threats like the Krethic Dominion. On their first day, Haiwan stood on the bridge of her new flagship, a joint design vessel crewed by both humans and Velens. Young-soo stood beside her, reviewing patrol routes. "Strange, isn't it?" Haiwan said. "A few months ago, I was afraid of humans. Now I can't imagine working without them," Young-soo grinned. "That's because you've got to know us. We're not scary once you understand we're just regular people who happen to be really good at breaking things. And protecting things," Haiwan added. That, too, across the galaxy. The story of Vela Prime spread. Other species learned about the humans who had crossed light years to answer a distress call, about the soldiers who died protecting strangers, about the engineers who rebuilt what others had destroyed. The Krethic Dominion heard the stories too. They stopped their expansion plans in sectors near human space. Their military leaders developed a new tactical doctrine: avoid humans. If humans are involved, withdraw. Fighting them is not worth the cost. A new saying spread through the galaxy, spoken in dozens of languages by dozens of species. It started as a joke, but became a genuine warning. Before any aggressive action, military leaders would ask, "Is this worth calling the humans?" Because the galaxy had learned something important. Humans were Deathworlders. They came from a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They evolved to survive impossible conditions. They were aggressive, violent, terrifyingly hard to kill, but they were also loyal, protective, stubborn enough to hold the line when everyone else would run. They would cross vast distances to help strangers. They would fight impossible odds to protect the weak. They would die for people they had just met because it was the right thing to do. On Earth, monuments were built for the 4,327 soldiers who died at Vela Prime. Their names were carved in stone. So humanity would never forget what they had done. But on Vela Prime, the monuments told a different story. They showed human and Velan names together. They told of two species who met in crisis and became friends. They told of the day the quarantined. Deathworlders proved that dangerous and evil were not the same thing. Commander Taehyun, now working as a liaison between human and Velan military forces, often gave tours of the memorial gardens. When visitors asked why the humans had done it, why they had risked everything for strangers, he always gave the same answer: because someone asked for help. To humans, that's all the reason they need. Admiral Jin Woo retired 5 years later. He had served humanity for 30 years and felt he had earned rest. On his last day, Captain Haiwan visited him. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Travel," Jin Woo said. "See the galaxy? Visit the worlds we've made friends with. Maybe write a book about the war. About the peace that came after," Jin Woo corrected. "The war is the easy part to understand. It's the peace that matters. It's the friendships we built. The bridges between species, that's the story worth telling." Haiwan smiled. "You changed everything, you know? Before you came, the galaxy saw humans as threats to be contained. Now, they see you as protectors. Heroes." Ginwoo shook his head. "We're not heroes. We're just people who answer when someone calls for help. That's not heroic. That's basic decency. To most species, basic decency is helping neighbors. You cross the galaxy to help strangers, and maybe the galaxy needs to expand its definition of neighbor," Jinwoo said. "We're all living on the same cosmic block. That makes us all neighbors." Years passed. The human coalition integration continued. Joint military forces became common. Human doctors trained at Velan medical schools. Velan artists studied at human universities. Children of both species grew up together, learning that different didn't mean dangerous.